It was a crazy and unforgiving rain, and you can see that what we gained in abundance makes up for any moisture that we got in excess. So you can see there is grass growing up between the straw, but most of the plants are going quite strong. The cover crop on the vegetated strips is growing quite quickly. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. We're doing a quick tour here of the goings on at Prosperity Homestead. Actually, I'm at Sustainable Homestead Institute. I'm from Prosperity Homestead. But I'm excited to see that while we have an overabundance of biomass, we don't have a lot of runoff on the ground from the torrential rains and storm weather that we had recently. There were, here in southeastern Virginia, tornado warnings and tornadoes, heavy rains, and just a pounding weather. And you can see everything remains in place. Now the secret is level contour beds with shallow or light tillage only to terminate the cover crops. You can see here where the potatoes were planted in the last video that the surface area is quite beat up, and there is some exposure on the surface with the soil. But overall, I see more areas that puddled rather than washed away. So I don't see any trenches washing away. This area was going to get retilled. As you can see, the tiller's still here for mechanical seeding. It is still in good place. And I want to look down slope to see there's no run or surface irrigation problems. Now there are some areas that the sun and the heat and the water have created an overabundance of cover crop. You can see there's a plant that we want, surrounded by quite a few grasses and other things that are not as desirable. So really this has to be hand weeded. But again, we have the grains on the sides that we can use for straw. And we are introducing more grains as seed. But again, biomass becomes cover crop. So the vegetative strips have done their job to keep the water in our beds. Now we're going to cross on over here to the area that was tilled last. There was some adjustment tillage done out this way so that they can be mechanically seeded. And what you'll see is the bees having a wonderful time with all of those flowers in the cover crop. And then we do have some cracking, so you can see where the moisture has ran over the soil, and then it's dried out rapidly. Again, it dried out rapidly because we don't have biomass cover in these particular beds. Again, we didn't get a chance to mechanically seed because of the rains, but this will get mechanically seeded and likely become corn like what's going on over here. So you can see these corns taken up very quickly. Now again, without some kind of thick cover, you have to come in here with a stirrup rake or something to disturb the soil and break down that cover, or supplement the cover with edible. You can see a little bit of edible greens there, some peas coming up, some other things coming up. But ultimately, it wouldn't hurt to have chopped straw, or again, biomass that's growing in the vegetative strips to kind of fill out between these plants. We can intercrop, so we can have corn, squash, and peas all growing in the same space. So we can also intercrop in order to fill the space. But you wouldn't think that there has been a massive storm coming through, dropping 4, maybe 5 inches of water on this particular area, because our beds are stable and well maintained. Now they're also level and on contour, and they're also cultivated in such a way that they're surrounded by biomass. So the winds and the rains don't impact as much because we've got these vegetative strips, which you will see are full of variety of bees, and that's why there are beehives on this particular site. Remember, I'm at Sustainable Homestead Institute, and you can come out here for training and experiential learning to see how this kind of thing works. And now it does look a little messy. If you didn't recognize what's here, it does look a little messy. Now we left a lot of the grains to grow so that we can use the thresher. That would be an exciting thing to come visit. But also a lot of the nitrogen fixing crops have been allowed to go to seed, as you can see here, because we are growing a polyculture of abundance. We want to invite in the pollinators, the beneficial birds, the insects that are all going to predate on those things that we don't want in the garden and ultimately gain more of what we do want in the garden. Up here is cut flowers. This bed, as I mentioned before, needs some mulch, but that's fine. It's all stable. It's all erosion stable. And we're going to finish at the food forest here because I noticed another plant in the food forest here. There's a couple more trees put out here. Excuse me. A couple more trees put out here in our food forest. And like we said about the food forest, is that these nitrogen fixing trees are the early pioneers, and they will feed our persimmons, our Jerusalem artichoke, our greens, anything that we're going to use as cover crops. And there's even strawberries in here. Now, do we need to weed in here? I think I'd get better production if I go around the trees and the strawberries and just cut down some of this extra stuff that's growing, the plantain that's growing and such, and then designate a few more of these trees as keepers. But as you can see, and I'm just kind of walking through here on the paths, as you can see, there's quite a few new trees coming online that just need to be planted. Now, what's great is to set out the tree in advance. Set out the tree in advance, just get your spacing, and you're going to build your spacing so that trees are going to be 4 to 8 feet apart. Now, again, you can be 4 foot from a nitrogen fixing tree and 8 foot from another productive tree. And then as the nitrogen fixing trees are slowly crowded out of the environment, you have room for your productive trees to take over. So there's a variety of productive trees in here. And I just saw an interesting pollinator in here that I don't think we're going to catch them on camera, but see this particular plant right here, like this probably needs to be staked up. That way everything's going vertically. The benefit of a food forest is also erosion control, because the forest itself slows the rain down and the deep roots of the plants hold the soil in place. But the benefit of a food forest as well is the layers of forest. So in a garden area, we tend to have only one layer. And look at those beautiful hairy vetch flowering and all the different flowers in here. But in a garden area, you tend to have one layer, 1 or 2 layers. Food forest, you can have as many as 7. So for every inch of water that comes down, you get 7 times the value from a food forest. But again, conventional crops, 1 or 2 layers, 2 or 3 layers is just as valuable, especially when you start understanding these techniques such as the vegetative strips, the organic beds, and ultimately how we're layering in our work. Click the link below to join our mailing list to get announcements of events, activities, and more learning materials, including special reports to help you have greater abundance at your small farm, homestead, or estate. I'll see you in the next video.